But today I want to talk about state changing, which is something I just made up. I'm sure there's some other framework that talks about this that I'm unaware of, but we're going to be talking about state changing for PMDD. PMDD shaped my life for 17 years before I could name it. I spent those years searching for answers, questioning my sanity, and desperately seeking treatments that actually worked. My painful journey had an unexpected twist. Helping others heal from PMDD became my life's purpose. Hi, I'm Jess, a board-certified nutritional therapist, coach, the founder of Her Mood Mentor, and your host. This is PMDD Pep Talk, a weekly reminder that your suffering is real, your experience is valid, and your future is brighter than your symptoms suggest. Each week, we're going to explore the truths about PMDD that nobody talks about. The kind of truths that shift something deep inside you and make you think, maybe there's more possible than I imagined. Whether you're in the depths of luteal darkness or riding the clarity of your follicular phase, you're exactly where you need to be. Because here's what I know for sure. Healing PMDD isn't just about managing symptoms, it's about transforming your life. This challenge, as brutal as it can be, is an invitation to know yourself more deeply and live a more joyful, purpose-filled life. PMDD might feel like your whole story, but it's just a chapter, and you get to write what comes next. Welcome to PMDD Pep Talk. Quick pep talk pause. Remember that everything we talk about here is meant to educate and inspire. Always team up with your healthcare provider for personal medical advice. All right, now let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to PMDD Pep Talk. In episode 46, we talked about the escalation patterns with PMDD and why meditation or just trying to calm down in an activated escalation state really don't work. And today we're going to be building on that. So many of these episodes build on each other. There are so many things that I want to talk to you about, and I want to keep these episodes short, and I want to try as much as possible, which I really struggle with, to stay on one topic, even though these all meld and blend together. So just kind of stick with me here, and I hope that it makes sense as we go. So I know you've been in a PMDD spiral and you've tried to just calm down and it hasn't worked. And that was what episode 46 was about. And this episode that we're talking about today is about state. Escalation states we went through. But today I want to talk about state changing, which is something I just made up. I'm sure there's some other framework that talks about this that I'm unaware of, but we're going to be talking about state changing for PMDD. And I really want you to know that something isn't wrong with you, because I know you've tried to change your state before. You've tried to calm down. You've tried to intercept the emotional wave that's coming on. And that was what episode 46 was about, was like kind of what that looks like and a little bit about why, but we're going to keep unpacking the why, and we're going to keep sharing some tools building on those ideas. So by the end of this episode, you're going to know a little bit more about why. We're going to keep getting into that in coming episodes though as well. And I want you to be really thinking about when you're at like an 80 to 100, maybe even a 70 to 100 on that escalation scale, you're going to have to reach for different tools to change your state. We talked a lot about co-regulation last time, but sometimes that's not accessible, and I want to share some other tools. But when it comes to the why, no one really teaches us about our nervous systems. And what you need to know is when you're in that high escalation state, you're like spun all the way up, you're tightly wound, your thinking brain is no longer driving. You are in a survival mode, your amygdala is activated, you are not that able to easily access consciousness. Okay, and it's where so much guilt and shame comes from, which we're going to do another episode about. And I'm really trying to parse these out. So like I said, we're talking about one topic at a time. But that reasoning part of your brain is not online. You can't reason your way out of it. You can't plan out of it. You probably can't talk yourself down out of it. You probably can't see the bigger picture, right? That's all gone quiet. You're in survival mode, and your body and your nervous system in an alarm state are really running the show now. And you can't talk yourself out of an alarm state. You just can't. We have to change the state that the alarm is responding to. And that's the whole idea behind this episode. Like I said, it's something that I call a state change. So a state change is when you deliberately do something that shifts your physical state or your surroundings so that your emotional state has something to follow. You're not trying to think your way out of it or think your way to being calm. You're actually changing the conditions that your brain is reacting to and letting your mind and your conscious brain catch up after. And here's what I really want you to sit with. So you already know how to do this. You've probably done it for someone else but yourself. So think about when a toddler is in a meltdown on the kitchen floor, right? You don't just crouch down and say, let's process your feelings about the cracker that got broken that you're now having a tantrum about, right? No, you don't try to reason with them. You pick them up and you take them to a different room. You get a toy out. You change the state of the situation. We do this with pets. When a puppy is overstimulated and biting everything in sight and biting you, right? You don't lecture the puppy. You change its environment. You change its state. You take it out. You redirect it. You move it into a new space. So we do this intuitively when we're mothering, when we're caring for an animal, when we are dealing with a child who is past the point of reason. It just comes really natural for us to do this, but we don't often do this for ourselves. But we change their state because we know in our bones that you can't reason with a nervous system that is fully lit. Okay, so why do we sit in the same room, in the same chair, in the same body, and expect ourselves to think our way out of a spiral? This is not how you calm yourself down or process through a high escalation state. You have to change your state first, and then the calming, the processing, the recentering will come after. So if you haven't listened to episode 46 yet, go back to it after this one, or pause this one and go back and let that be the foundation for what we're talking about here. Because that's really where I'm walking you through the escalation scale from 0 to 100, and why a tool that works beautifully when you're escalated at like a 20 or 30 can completely backfire at an 80 to 100. So this episode is really the next piece from that episode, as I said, and these are the moves that you want to start to reach for when you're in a higher zone, other than co-regulation if you don't have access to that. Now, I want to tell you about a moment because I lived all of this before I had language for it, and I think it's why I'm so excited to talk about this episode. It's why I'm so excited to coach women through this, because I've been through it and I see it, I know it, I've lived it, I continue to navigate it. But years ago, I was in my luteal phase, I was standing in the kitchen, and everything in me, inside my body, was screaming. Not crying, screaming on the inside. My skin felt too tight, every sound in the house was too loud. I had done all the right things. I had tried to breathe, I had tried to journal, I had tried to tell myself, this is just a cycle, it will pass. But none of it mattered, none of it did anything to help me in the moment. If anything, sitting there and trying to feel better actually made it worse, because now I was then failing at trying to calm down on top of everything else that I was perceiving I was feeling at. So I did something that at the time felt really weird. I walked outside and I did push-ups on our back patio until my arms gave out. It wasn't because someone had this state change conversation with me. It was just an intuitive thing that played out. And something really shifted. Not all the way, but enough that my thinking brain came back online and I could make the next decision, do the next thing that I needed to do, instead of drowning and getting deeper and deeper into a PMDD spiral that is quite honestly, life-threatening. Now, I didn't know it then, but I really had stumbled on to something that researchers have a name for. So let's get into it. So I'm going to give you 4 state change moves, and I'm keeping this list short on purpose because when you're at an 80 to 100, you don't need a menu of 20 things. You need 3 or 4 moves that you can remember without thinking. Remember, you're not thinking very clearly when you're in that activated nervous system state. When you're high in escalation, you're more in a survival state. So we need to not have to think about this. Now, I also want to say that we teach somatic nervous system regulation exercises to our clients. This is a little different flavor. We do these oftentimes more to signal safety to the body, so not so much as an escalation tool, but you could use some of those that we teach as an escalation tool as well, because they can help you change your state. But that's kind of a different conversation, and one I definitely want to have with you. But the takeaway from that little sidebar was that somatics are a big part of doing a state change. So I'm putting these out, from most physical to most accessible, so that wherever you are, there's one of these that you can reach to. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about here, a tool that you can use to state change. This is doing something physically demanding for a short burst. Like I said in my example, I did push-ups until I couldn't physically do another push-ups. You could sprint, you could run up and down the stairs, you could do the somatic shaking, jumping, exercise. That's a somatic nervous system exercise we teach to our clients. But it needs to be something quick and very physical. So I don't mean going to the gym and doing a workout necessarily. That's a little different. I'm talking about short, hard, physical effort right now in the next 60 seconds that you would reach for when you're at an 80 to a 100 on the escalation scale. Right? You're not going to be like, I'm going to put my clothes on and I'm going to go to the gym now. I'm going to drive there. No. This is an intervention in the moment of something physical that you are going to do. And I don't mean something hard like, oh, I'm going to do the laundry that I finally have been putting off. No, I mean actually physically hard in the body, something like cardio driven. It's going to help move some of that cortisol that's building up, some of that adrenaline that's building up in your system. And here's why it works. So when you're at a high escalation state, your body has been flooded with stress hormones and stress chemicals, and it has nowhere to go. But a hard physical burst gives that energy an exit, right? You feel the energy in your body. It might feel like irritability, anger, rage, frustration, bitterness. This is going to give it a place to go when you're at that 80 to 100 on the escalation scale. And researchers who study emotional regulation skills call this, just intense exercise. And it is one of the fastest ways to bring down the intensity on a big emotion. It's in the same family as something called opposite action, where you deliberately do the opposite of what the emotion is telling you to do. And the action itself starts to shift the feeling, which is what we're doing this for. We're trying to get a state change, an internal state change, but we are using our bodies and we are using sometimes external things to get that state change. So the research suggests that a single round of this can move your state inside of your body very quickly in 15 minutes or less. So the spiral that you're experiencing when you're at a high escalation state really wants you to collapse in a way, to get into a freeze state, to be stuck, to zone out on your phone, or to have another exit for the escalation. I had a client once who said she would just drive to Walmart and pick fights with people because she needed somewhere to put that energy. This is a better place to put that energy. Using physical and the physicality of your body in a short burst to state change. So move hard, move fast is the opposite of moving into a freeze state, of channeling that energy into some sort of conflict or self-harming behavior. And that is the point of the state change. Okay, now we're going to move on to the second option for state change. Now, there are more options than we're covering in this episode, but I don't want to overload you here. So think back to the toddler on the kitchen floor. This second move to change your state is kind of the grown-up version of taking that toddler outside. Okay, go outside, and don't just go outside, walk until you feel it shift. This is the one that I often lean on the hardest. Now, it's not always as accessible as doing push-ups, right? You could just do that in your house. You don't need time. You can do push-ups until you feel the changed state or until you can't do push-ups anymore. But this is one that I turn to a lot when I'm noticing that I'm starting to escalate. If I can, I put my shoes on and I walk. Going outside changes your environment, which really helps change your state. Almost probably more than anything else on this list, at least for me personally. You get up, you physically take yourself outside. You walk. You walk and you walk. You don't listen to something. You don't call anyone unless you're trying to use co-regulation as a skill, but you walk. It's not a workout walk. It's just a walk. You just walk at the pace you need to walk at. You're not trying to get a certain amount of steps. You're not trying to cover a certain amount of distance. You're just in your body and you're walking and you're breathing until you start to feel the state change. Sometimes it's 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 30 minutes. It's going to depend on how escalated you were. And here's why it works on every level all at once. So this is something that researchers have studied about, the way your brain breaks your day into separate events. And part of it shows up as something that they've nicknamed the doorway effect. When you move from one space into another, your brain treats it as the start of a new event, and it partially resets what you were just holding on to. So the spiral was anchored to the place that you were physically in, the kitchen in the toddler example, right? But the new space, the new event, kind of loosens the grip on the spiral that you were going down. The fresh air, the daylight, you have a wider view of perception. I mean, we could do a whole episode on so many aspects of perception, but PMDD is very myopic. You're like honed in, and we need to get a horizon viewpoint to start to, like, this could even just be another state change, is to look at a horizon rather than focusing in on what your brain is doing by being in a survival state and just honing in on the one thing that you're spiraling on. Getting outside opens your field of vision and gives you more of a horizon viewpoint, which actually neurologically has an impact on your brain. But okay, you're also going outside. See how I'm saying like everything blends into everything else, and we could do like a whole podcast on all of these little details, but we're sticking to the story here and getting outside. So getting outside, great. Getting outside and walking, even better, until you start to feel that state change. It's what you do with an overstimulated child or an animal. You take them outside. I'm sure you've done it. You change their environment, even moving them to another room if going outside isn't accessible to you for whatever reason. But you are also allowed to do this for yourself, and you should do this for yourself and play with it and see how it feels in your body. Like changing your environment, going outside, it's not a small thing. It might be like the most powerful thing that you can do on this list. Now, different things are going to resonate for different people, so you're going to have to try these out and you're going to have to see what changes your state. And keep in mind that what changes your state might follow that escalation pattern, right? What changes your state at a 20 to 30 versus what changes your state at a 70 to 80 might be different depending on the situation that is happening. So there are nuance and complexities here, but the point is just try these things and see how it works for you. So move 3, moving on to the third option. And I really like this one, but it's not always accessible. And it's doing something kind for someone else in that exact moment. And I don't mean the caretaking you're already doing every day. I don't mean cooking dinner for your family or answering one more message or one more question. Those are obligations, and the obligations are not going to, doing the obligations aren't going to give you this effect. I mean a small, unrequired act of kindness towards someone that you owe nothing, someone you do not know, a stranger. Hold the door open for someone. Let a car merge. Smile at someone when you pass them on the street. Leave a kind review or comment somewhere. Pay for the coffee for the person behind you. Like, little acts of kindness are really powerful. Now, if you're at an 80 to 100, again, that might require thinking that you don't have online at that point. But I want to throw this one out there because it's really powerful, and doing something kind for someone else helps your body release oxytocin, which helps you feel more connected to yourself and the outside world and other human beings, which lowers stress. One study actually found that people who did small daily acts of kindness for just 1 week had noticeably lower distress by the end of that week. A spiral is really going to pull you inward. It makes things smaller and smaller. Remember that myopic viewpoint. You're like honed in, you're like laser focused. And this tiny act of kindness, again, pulls you outward for the duration. It can help you reset and redirect. It can help you state change. Okay, moving on to the fourth one we're going to talk about. And this one is super accessible, actually. I do this one a lot. This really can help me calm the nervous system. It's one of those somatic nervous system exercises we teach with our clients. So you can do this all the time to signal safety to your body, but it's one that I notice when I'm starting to feel more escalated. Maybe I'm at like a 50 or 60. This can really help me change my state. And it is humming. So you can do it anywhere. Really super accessible. And it might be the most accessible on this list. So if you can do none of the other things, at least try this. And all you have to do is you are going to inhale through your nose, and when you exhale, you're going to hum out for the duration of that exhale. And you're just going to do this over and over and over and over until you feel a state change. However long it takes, you're going to do it. Now, when you're doing the humming, I want you to move your jaw around and try to get the most resonance, the rattling. Your ears might start to itch. That's what you're kind of looking for, is rattling your neck, your head. It's stimulating the vagus nerve when you do this. Now, we're not singing. We're not trying to make a certain sound here. We're just humming on the exhale until you run out of air. Then you're going to take another breath, and then you're going to do it again. You want to try to stretch that hum and that exhale out even longer and even longer, vibrating the throat and the chest. It's giving your nervous system a signal to settle. It's very simple, and it is a real reset. Like I said, a somatic nervous system evidence-based exercise that you can do that we teach in our program. You can do it in the car, at your desk, really anywhere. You don't have to do it super loud. Like, you can even do it around other people. They might not even notice. And it works. It works, guys. Okay. So this whole episode, we're digging into 4 ways to state change. And we're recognizing that we need to get out of the state that we're currently in, and that calming down or meditating isn't doing it. Trying to think our way out of that activated nervous system state isn't doing it. We need these things, or things like this, that are going to actually change our state. Sometimes that requires an environmental change, and I would actually encourage that regardless. I would move rooms if you're going to hum, if you can. I would move rooms if you're going to do some push-ups, if you can. I would go outside 100% all the time if you can, to do any of these, or to walk, like I said, until you feel the state change. These are just a few things. These are just a few things to start with, but I want to remind you that, again, that You cannot access your thinking brain when you're escalated. Co-regulation is fantastic, but it's not always what you need in the moment. So these 4 state changes can really help you move out of a spiral that's going to send you into a PMDD episode that then you're going to be recovering from and feeling guilt and shame from and trying to rebuild your life from cycle after cycle. These are quick things that you can try and just see if you notice a state change. So again, like we talked about in episode 46, you don't want to try to build this list when you're already spiraling. You need to kind of have these things ready and on dock for the next time that you're starting to feel dysregulated, or the next time that you become conscious and you're already very escalated. That can happen too. So write these down, put them somewhere, kind of flag one that you know you're going to try. The next time you become escalated, you could tell a partner or a family member, hey, if you notice that I'm escalated, will you remind me to try XYZ of these that you're most interested in? Because you're probably not going to remember any of this when you are fully escalated. And again, remember, that's not a character flaw. That's just how these high escalation states work. So you need to decide now, today, while you're here, you're listening to this, you can think clearly, you are not fully escalated. Which 2 or 3 of these or 1 of these would you like to try? Put them on a sticky note, put it on the fridge, put it on the bathroom mirror, on the background of your phone. You could even put this inside your PMDD emergency kit if you wanted to, a list of these. And remember, from episode 46, you want to match the intervention with your zone of escalation. So go back and listen to episode 46, but when you were at a lower stage of escalation, something more gentle may work, breathing, journaling, resting. But when you're at a higher escalated state, you're at an 80, 100, you're going to need bigger levers to pull: the hard physical burst, the changing your whole environment, the doing a kind thing for a stranger, an act of kindness, or the humming, or the walking until you feel the state change. I also want to say before we wrap up that changing your state is not avoiding your feelings. I know it can sound like distraction, like you're just running away from the emotion, but this is not what's happening here, okay? There's a difference between numbing out, scrolling, eating to disappear feelings, pouring a drink. That's very different than a genuine state change that you're consciously, even when you're reaching for it in an unconscious state, you've already planned to consciously reach for it in that state. I know that's a little twisted, but a state change is not about making the feeling go away and pretending it never happened. It's about getting your thinking brain back online so that you can actually be with the feeling and respond to what's happening in your life instead of being drowned by the wave or run over by the wave. Now, this connects, again, so many connections here, but it connects to what we talked about back in episode 33 on nervous system regulation. So regulation isn't staying calm all the time. It's about being able to move between different nervous system states. That's a healthy nervous system. So also go back and listen to episode 33 if you want to kind of understand more of the conversation around nervous system regulation and what happens before the escalation comes. Like we talk about how regulating your nervous system isn't about being calm all the time in that episode. So highly recommend. Now, I also want to remind you, spiraling is a part of life. It's not just PMDD. It's something all humans do, and nothing is wrong with you because calm down doesn't work or because meditation doesn't work, right? The whole takeaway from this episode is that when your alarm is loud, you are moving out of a conscious ability to be in a thinking state. You have to learn to work with your body instead of fighting it with your mind. Okay? You change your kid state, you change your animal state, you are allowed to change your own state. You just need a reminder, maybe you need some tools to do that. So, main points here before I let you go. You can't think your way out of a heightened escalation zone. When that alarm is blaring, your thinking brain is offline. So use a state change and then let your mind catch up later. Also, you already do this. You take the toddler outside, you redirect the puppy, same move. Redirecting a lit up nervous system also works on your nervous system too. The 4 moves that we talked about in this episode are physically exerting yourself hard and fast, going outside, changing your environment, changing rooms, or going out and walking until you feel the shift. That's my personal favorite. Another would be doing a small act of kindness for a stranger. And the last one would be humming on your exhale until you feel the state change. So go back and listen to episode 46. Think about your zones. Think about what it looks like when you're in different escalation zones, and then build the list of things you want to try while you're calm. Go back to episode 40. Learn about building your PMDD emergency kit and put this list there, or put it on your mirror, or tell a friend or a family member to remind you of this list so you can access it when you need it. And then let me know how it goes when you try these things. Now, before we wrap up, if this episode has resonated with you, please take 2 seconds to support the show. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It genuinely helps more women find this content. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, wherever that is, take a moment, leave a rating and review. It takes less than a minute, and it makes a huge difference in getting this information in front of the women who need it most. So here's what I want you to do this week. Pick 2 of the 4 things that we talked about here, kind of 4/5 with just changing your environment. Just pick 2, write them down, put them somewhere you'll see them. Next time you feel yourself climbing towards a 70, a 60 on the escalation scale, before you try to talk yourself out of it, change your state. Do a state change. Move hard, go outside, change rooms, walk until you feel better. Do one kind thing, or hum on your exhale until you feel that state change. Okay? Now, next week, we are going to be talking about what happens after the spiral, when the wave has passed and you're left staring at what you said or what you did. And I'm going to use one of my favorite metaphors, one that I have tattooed on my own body, the drowning girl, to show you why PMDD makes you push away the very people trying to help you, and why that is actually survival and not anything about you as a person. So if you've ever felt like you're too much for the people that you love, this one is going to be for you. And it really continues to layer in so many of the other conversations that we have had. I'm so excited to talk to you about that one. So come back and we'll dig in there. Until then, thanks for being here.